welcome everybody. My name's Tousignant. I'm the director here at the Trevor Zoo, and I've actually been working here for 30 years now, or almost 30 years. And I began here as an intern way back in 1984, and with the exception of a nice little 6-year hiatus when I earned my PhD down in Austin, Texas, I've been here throughout the entirety of that 30 years and been loving every minute of it. We're here in Millbrook, New York, and it's just a beautiful place to live. And who could have a better job than being a zoo director at this wonderful facility? I'm going to hopefully tell you a little bit about our facility and its history this afternoon as we work our way through. So again, welcome to everybody. Thanks for joining us. As you know, there are lots of things going on in society right now, and I just wanted to give you one more option of good things to do. So a little bit of history about the Trevor Zoo. We actually were opened in 1936, founded by Frank Trevor. That's why it's called the Trevor Zoo. Frank was our first biology teacher here at Millbrook School, and Millbrook School actually owns and operates the Trevor Zoo. Frank arrived for his job, and he actually had a station wagon full of animals, and that's because he loved animals and he loved caring for them and essentially learning from them. In those early days, the school had very few boys. It was started as a boys' school. I think in the first class there might have been 4 or 5 boys, and it slowly grew from there. When Frank started the zoo in 1936, we might have been at the large number of 20 or 30 students. And immediately they began helping him take care of the animals. The zoo began in modest means. There was an old apple orchard across the street, and that became the space where the zoo was first located and has been here ever since. As we go through more video opportunities in the future, we hope to show you some of the zoo. And if you haven't been here, of course, we hope that once the coronavirus pandemic is over, that you get a chance to come to the zoo and see it firsthand. It's a zoo that covers about 6 acres, including about an acre pond, and we have lots of exotic animals that we work with every day. And we also, because we have the pond, we see lots of wildlife on that pond as well. Dan is showing you a little bit around the zoo now as we chat. So the zoo then became an outdoor learning opportunity, or an outdoor classroom for Frank to help teach his biology course. And the students just loved working with the animals. And Frank, of course, intuitively knew that animals were a real draw for especially the boys. And he was going to be able to teach things that he couldn't do just from a textbook alone. That's been our motto ever since. We want people, our students, learning through hands-on experiences, working with and caring for our animals. That has gone through, of course, changes over the years. We became members of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and that has really been instrumental in helping us bring our students up to the modern practices that are being used in zoos all around the world now. We were first accredited in 1989, and that was a big undertaking for us to get the zoo up to the standards that are required for AZA zoos, and it's been a wonderful way to be involved in the greater conservation effort as we've grown over the years. Today, the zoo is a modern zoo housing about 80 species of animals, 10 of which are endangered species, and we work with all of the collaborative programs within AZA that we can to further conservation and the major goals of AZA. Again, the Trevor Zoo is kind of a unique zoo because we're located at a private boarding school. Our students are, for the most part, boarding students here. They live at the school, and so we have a wonderful opportunity to have them work with us and our collection every day.
Just showing you the school across the street here, which unfortunately is closed at the moment, but we hope as soon as the coronavirus is over, our students will be returning. We'll tell you more about what the students do here later on in this broadcast.
So, as I said, this is our first time doing this, so we're trying to figure out the best way to show you the zoo and what we do first. One of our hopes is that as we continue this in weeks to come, that we'll be focusing on different members of our staff and different species that we have here at the zoo and how we care for them and the different programs around the world that are involved with some of those animals. Just for example, we have red wolves here, and red wolves are a very important species to be working on right now. They are one of the most endangered animals in the world, and they're right here in the United States. So we're working very hard collaboratively with the AZA programs to promote the reintroduction of the red wolf and to promote the conservation of that species. Again, more on that as we move through the different programs. But Dan, why don't we head into the Meg's Education Center and we can continue the conversation a little bit. This building that we're heading into is called the Meg's Education Center in honor of Jane and Jonathan Meggs. Jonathan was the director prior to me and was the director of the zoo for 42 years. I had the great privilege of working with Jane and Jono for over 25 years, and I learned so much from Jono working with him over that time, and I'm thrilled to actually be following in his footsteps and trying to continue the great work that both Frank and Jono, and actually Seward Hiley, who ran the zoo for a few years in between Frank and before Jono took over. All three of those guys worked tremendously hard on a really tiny budget. I've been blessed with their legacies and a growing public interest, which is also helping to fund some of our projects and a lot of the conservation work that we do. And it as I say, it's hard work, but it's great fun to be involved with the greater outside projects that are going on, not just working with our own students here at the school. So, welcome to the Meg's Education Center. As most zoos do now, we actually use a lot of digital resources where we can. AZA puts out a lot of wonderful material that helps to, again, explain some of the bigger conservation projects that are going on around the world. And AZA certainly has the knowledge base and scientific staff to produce some of that material that would be very difficult for each of the zoos to do on their own. They also sort of serve as a collective clearinghouse for all of the information that each zoo is providing. And when I say each zoo, we have about 230 institutional members, both here in the United States and now globally. So we're looking here at the dedication to Jonathan and Jane Meggs. They actually still live in the area, and we see them fairly frequently. Jono and Jane really began not only the work at the zoo and led the zoo transformation to allow us to be able to be AZA accredited, but also were tremendous advocates for the environment. Jane especially worked very, very hard on all kinds of green initiatives here at the school, probably resulting in our biggest moment, which is a 1.8 megawatt solar field here on campus that effectively makes us carbon neutral, along with other issues or other things that we've done on campus to reduce our footprint. That is perhaps Jane and Jono's greatest legacy, and yet I get to live their legacy here at the zoo every day, which was Jono's pride and joy.
And there's our AZA accreditation plaque. Why don't you tell people a little bit about what it's like to be accredited, and your job as an inspector too?
Yeah, so the AZA is a volunteer-based organization. So as you become a member, you have to, of course, meet the accreditation standards, which are very stringent. We consider them to be the gold standard for animal care and welfare, both, again, as I've said before, here in the United States and worldwide. As an inspector, I actually have the privilege of and responsibility of going around and helping to inspect other facilities just as we are inspected also. All of these positions in AZA are volunteer-based, and it's a great collaborative community. I've had some of my best experiences inspecting other zoos, and have actually developed lifelong friendships with some of the places where I've had the privilege of being able to be an inspector. And I won't lie, it's a challenging day on the day you're being inspected, and we're actually up for accreditation inspection in 2021, and the challenges of continuing to meet the ever improving standards is difficult, but it's the right thing to do, and we strive to be have as high a standards as possible every day. And as our good friend Denny Lewis, who runs the accreditation program, says, accreditation is not every 5 years, it's every day. And that's one of our most important beliefs, is that, as I always tell the students, what that means for us is every day we have to make sure that we're putting the animals to bed in a way that they've had the best day possible, and they're getting prepared for their best day tomorrow. Remember, I work a lot with high school students, so I have to bring it down to a level that helps them understand and have the empathy and compassion to do the hard work that is involved in caring for these animals every day. And of course, I have a wonderful professional staff to do that with. So it's fantastic. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that all of us get in this business but because we love animals. I actually grew up milking cows, and I think every person in the world should have the benefit of being able to do some of those close relationship building experiences that help you understand and have empathy for other species and even other humans.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about this building, what we keep in this building animal-wise,
Sure.
and the purpose of this building?
Yeah. So this building was actually the last piece of a major reorganization of the facility in general, which began in 1988 and culminated in about 1994. This building was meant as the educational sort of centerpiece of the facility, has a classroom in it, and has a couple of spaces where we can gather groups together when we're not under coronavirus mandates, and just provide a space for teaching things about animals, about conservation, about local efforts to be green, those types of things. So the building itself houses some small aquarium type exhibits. Generally speaking, these are mostly small reptiles and amphibians, excuse me, as well as housing some of our digital resources. In a bit, you'll be able to see something we call the iGlobe. And again, we have ways for our faculty members on campus to come down and have cross-curriculum teaching. So we have a number of different courses that try to incorporate understanding of the natural world into their programs as much as we do here at the zoo on a daily basis. We even have foreign language classes down here quite frequently, learning how to say the names of the animals in French or Spanish or Chinese or whatever language they're studying. This was the last piece of the master plan that John O'Meggs was working on before he retired, and it's been a wonderful joy to move into this building. We didn't even really have desks prior to this building, so we did a lot of standing at counters. Probably one of the things I want to actually mention is this tree that we're standing in front of right now. Here at Millbrook, we have these things called CESs, which is Culminating Experience for Seniors. Seniors come up with different kinds of projects that sort of encapsulate their overall experience at Millbrook over the time that they've been here. And this tree is a great example. I had a couple of students that wanted to give back to the zoo, but they weren't really involved in the zoo husbandry program that much. And at the time, they said, we'd like to do something with conservation if we could. Those two students worked with me to locate this tree, which was actually a dead tree that had been killed by carpenter ants, so it was hollowed out in the middle. And we created the opportunity for our visitors to be able to donate coins to our endangered species, helping us to then support conservation programs around the world. I'm very pleased to say that this high school senior project has generated over $7,000 in quarters, nickels, dimes, pennies, and even dollar bills. And it should be a very proud moment for those two seniors to think that they've helped all these endangered species have greater programs going on in their natural habitats. So that's very exciting for us. And then down in the lower level of this building is a space that's dedicated to helping us understand the ramifications and challenges of climate change. Sort of begins with describing the problem and the challenge, and ends with ways that families and individuals can help and be involved and support the other programs that are going on as well. So we have a small reef aquarium exhibit.
Why don't we go take a look at our aquarium and you can tell folks about it a bit.
I will tell you right now, it seems a little darker than usual because one of our wonderful lights burned out the other day, and we're actually in the process of getting it repaired. But one of the big challenges, of course, are many of the reefs around the world in the oceans, and it's an opportunity for people to see just even a tiny little sliver of the species that are in the ocean, and yet most of those are in spaces that are highly endangered. All of the reefs are under tremendous pressure, and our hope, of course, is that we still have reefs to look at and to help us regulate the environment into the future. That's becoming a bigger and bigger challenge. But
so what kind of fish do we have in here right now?
Well, we have a yellow tang, a clownfish. This triggerfish is one of my favorites.
And he's pretty young, this trigger. Is he going to get bigger?
He will get a little bit bigger. These fish will grow pretty slowly in this tank. This is about a 190 gallon tank. And so we don't have an overabundance of fish in here because we want everybody to have a fair amount of room. The clownfish, of course, like to be in their anemones when they get a little nervous. And so we're trying hard to have some anemones for them. And of course, you've got the yellow tang right there. Several of these fish are kind of neat because they're grazers, and they actually help maintain the health of the tank by grazing on algae and things that grow in the tank.
And what about these guys?
These are long tentacled anemones, and they're pretty cool. That one is generally the favorite of the clownfish. I think he's more interested in the camera right now than the anemone. But the anemones are very interesting. You often think of them as permanent fixtures, but they will move around a bit, and sometimes you don't see them at all. And they'll be hiding behind a rock, and then they'll open up and move out. So they're actually quite a dynamic set of organisms when sometimes you might think they're pretty stationary.
And what kind of care goes into maintaining a saltwater tank?
You know, all fish tanks are what I like to say are finicky. So they're obviously they need cleaning and food, but water quality is probably the most important thing that goes into fish tanks, and maintaining that water quality is a daily chore. And then there's lots of little bits and pieces of equipment and different kinds of pumps and water flow and water circulation. All of these things are pretty critical. And we have a chiller here, so we have to make sure that the water doesn't get too hot or too cold. And of course, that's one of the challenges that the species in the wild are facing, because the oceans are warming. And even a little bit of temperature change means different growth and different paradigms for the reefs that these things are living in. And so that's a bit of a challenge. It's a little bit light in here at the moment. We tend to do more with the eye globe in the evening, but the eye globe is a geocoordinate projector essentially. So any scientific databases that have geographic coordinates to them can be displayed on the eye globe in a spherical way, so that you could internalize a little bit better what they mean in terms of the world or the Earth, as opposed to looking at a flat map in a textbook.
And I think in a future live from the Trevor Zoo Wednesday, we will spend some more time with the eye globe, and you could do a lesson and get into some more details of that.
Absolutely.
Why don't we head back up and talk about our live cameras?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, tell us about these steps, because I always found this.
Oh, yeah. Well, sometimes you live with something every day and you see it, and it does become commonplace to you. When we built the building, we tried to incorporate as many different teaching opportunities as we could into the building itself. And these stairs are all local hardwoods that would be found here in the Northeast. So each tread is a different species of hardwood. So you can see we go from white oak to black walnut, white ash, tulip tree, black cherry, red oak, sugar maple, and shagbark hickory. We have most of these trees here on the campus in somewhere. The campus is about 800 acres, so we have lots of different habitats on campus as well. In fact, in future live streams, you may actually get to be out in the field with me. I teach an animal behavior course, and in the springtime, a lot of our class is outdoors in the various habitats around campus. And
so we have a lot of people watching who probably went to Millbrook or know about Millbrook, but for the people who don't know what Millbrook School is, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so Millbrook School is a private preparatory college preparatory school. Again, I'm not a professional actor, as you can tell. And it's for grades 9 through 12, both boys and girls. The bulk of our students are boarding students, and we have a small cadre of day students who commute to campus. We have students from all over the world, and I believe this year 27 different states represented in our student population. We have about 325 students here on campus, and about 100, I believe, faculty and staff. And so it's about 3 students to each faculty and staff. We all have advisees. That's one of the hallmarks of our program. I have 6 advisees. I hope they're watching. And those advisor-advisee relationships become the hallmark of the students' experience here. We're the ones that help them coordinate their academic schedules, their any questions they have with their athletic programs, college plans, all of the types of things that a high school student would be thinking about get filtered through that advisor. And as I say, I have 6 advisees, and they're pretty much from all over the country. So I hope they're doing well. And by the way, if you are watching, you're supposed to respond to me. I sent you a text yesterday. Actually, that's a great segue to talk about one of my advisees, John Norfleet, who also did a CES here at the zoo. And some of you may have even watched the results of his CES. When he was trying to figure out what he was going to do, he had been watching some live cams of bird nests on the internet, and said, boy, I'd like to do that. And he happened to know that there was a red-tailed hawk nest down at the end of our canopy walkway, which is at the southern end of our campus. I said, boy, that's a great idea, except it's very far out here. There's no internet and there's no power. I don't know how we can do that. And just sort of coincidentally, we happen to have great blue herons that for a couple of years had been flying in each spring and nesting in the tops of spruce trees here in the middle of the zoo. Actually, pretty amazing. And I said, well, we have these great blue herons nesting here in the center of the zoo. We've got power here and we have internet. Why don't we try doing that? And that began a great collaboration between John, me, Dan Cohen from the class of 1986. We all got together, and John was the architect of the program, and we started to figure out what it was going to take to broadcast live nest cam from a great blue heron nest. We've been doing that now for 6 years, I believe. I think this will be our 7th year of broadcasting, and we now actually have 3 camera nests.
So this is wow, time flies. This will be our 7th year.
Yeah, so actually it takes me all the way back to the very first time we got the first camera installed. We had no idea how it was going to work. We turned it on. Within seconds we had mating herons on the camera, and we were all jumping up and down thinking this is amazing. It's been a lot of work, but it's been great fun. One of the things, we actually haven't had any herons in the trees yet, but it's early this year. And one of my great hopes is that they get to become another digital resource for you to actually be able to use with your children and or yourselves at home while everyone's experiencing some limitations in their movements. We have now expanded our program. We have live cams on our red panda exhibit, our pond exhibit, and of course the great blue herons. And we actually have a couple of more cameras planned. Even before the coronavirus, we have had lots of different classes that have been watching and following especially the great blue herons, but also the red pandas.
And look who's out right now.
And we've got a red panda out on exhibit right now, eating some bamboo.
Looks like Zoo, maybe.
They're quite hopeful for spring to come because we're getting toward the end of the green bamboo at this point. Our bamboo every year, as we get toward the end of winter, starts to get pretty brown from the cold, and then of course the bamboo pops back up anew in the spring, and sort of the birth of the spring equates with some green bamboo for the pandas, an exciting moment for them. On the screen now you can actually see our different views from our heron cameras. Our web pages also have chat rooms in them, and those chat rooms become very educational places. You can actually see right now that there was one a few days ago. We did have a pair of herons that were exhibiting some nest building and sort of bonding behavior. We haven't seen them again, but again, it's early, so hopefully we'll see them back. There's some guess that it is a pair from last year that we named Nate and Kate, so hopefully we'll see them.
And talk about our new camera this year.
In the lower left,
it'll come back around.
It'll come back around, but we've got a new camera this year, which is actually looking directly down into what we hope will be a great blue heron nest. It's a great spot, and if we do get a nesting pair there, it'll be an absolutely fabulous shot of the heron nest itself, and we'll be able to watch the developing nest and egg laying and hatching and feeding and all of those aspects.
And when people are looking for pandas, what can they see out there?
So in our panda cameras, which you're looking at right now, we've got a view of their outside habitat. They're inside nighttime quarters that they often go into. Very few of our animals are locked in at night, but they often will want to come in, and we give them the choice. So there's a shot of the nest box that they will go into, and you might say, gee, it's really, there's not much cushion in there for them. They actually tend to throw everything out, so we leave it bare, and then we give them materials if they want to bring them in, but they seem to prefer a nice flat, dry space. Barry in particular, if you watch that screen, you'll probably see her doing some yoga at various times. She does a lot of really cool poses in there, and lots of different stretches that I can't replicate. And then our other camera, as I say, is the pond habitat camera. Right now is actually a pretty good time to be watching that camera. We are seeing lots of the annual migratory birds coming through. Particularly right now we're seeing common mergansers and hooded mergansers coming through on the pond. And we'll see what comes through next. This fall we had some pretty fun activity with egrets coming through. We had a couple of days where we had 4 or 5 egrets that were hanging around on the pond for the whole day. So that was pretty fun to see. And so that's kind of what I have to say. I'd love to answer any questions if you have any. And
so, Kylene, do we have any questions out there that we need to answer so far?
Not questions right now, but someone, Thea, I think in Reese, wanted to hear about the foxes. Can you tell them a little bit about our foxes?
Yeah, so right now we have 2 species of foxes. We exhibit red foxes and Arctic foxes, and they actually live together. It's kind of an ironic way of showcasing one of the challenges that Arctic foxes face in their natural habitat in the far north. With climate change, it's actually gotten warmer in the Arctic, and red foxes have been able to move north basically, and are creating some pressure on the Arctic foxes by being up there and competing for the food resource. While they don't have any competition here, and we can exhibit them together, and they all actually seem to get along pretty well. In the wild, they wouldn't get along very well, and they would compete for the very limited food resources that are up there.
And hopefully we'll do a one of these Wednesday live events out in that area of the zoo, and we can show the foxes on the camera and talk more about our actual different ones that we have here.
Okay. Augie would like to know if there is a chance that we will do one of these in the red pandas or on the lemurs.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't want to, I will say something, but it's going to get me in trouble with the staff. There is a possibility that we could have lemur babies this year, and so we'll be watching that very closely. And of course, it's an important veterinary moment for us. There are lots of husbandry details that have to change, and so we'll certainly be focusing a lot of attention on the lemurs this spring as we get closer to the possibility of lemur births. Both the ring-tailed lemurs, excuse me, and our black and white ruffed lemurs have breeding recommendations and have mated this year. So it is conceivable that we could have, pardon the pun actually, that we could have both ring-tailed babies and black and white ruffed lemur babies.
So what does that mean when we have breeding recommendations?
So all of our endangered species are controlled by stud bookkeepers and species advisors that are looking at all of the scientific information available, the population of animals that is in captivity, and is trying to coordinate that population to create good genetic diversity and to not have any particular individuals overrepresented in the population. And so they do a lot of careful analysis and then come up with a recommendation for what animals should be mated and hopefully produce offspring.
Okay. Paul would like to know if we have otters.
Paul, we do have otters. Actually, I should say at the moment we have 1 otter. We have a female North American river otter, and we're waiting for another individual, a young male, to come from another facility. We're actually in the process of going through the various veterinary paperwork and USDA shipping paperwork to make that happen. And he will actually move up here sometime in the coming month or two. And then we'll go through a period of quarantine here, and then we will try to figure out the best introduction for them. So introduction of wild animals is always a little bit interesting. Think of it as sort of a blind date where neither animal knows exactly who they're getting to meet. And you have to be pretty careful, because in the wild, when animals meet, sometimes it can be nerve-wracking. And so we go through a pretty slow procedure of letting them get to know each other from smell first and sight, and then after we feel like there's been a good introductory period of kind of lightly getting to know each other, let them actually see each other and touch each other and see how that goes. So that'll be an interesting moment for us as well.
Okay. Margaret wants to know any wallaby babies.
We do actually have a couple of wallaby babies in the pouch right now. We call them joeys, and we can see the joeys moving around in the pouch. We haven't seen any heads pop out yet because they're still too young. So when wallabies are born, they're actually very tiny. They're really not much bigger than my thumb. And they crawl up into the pouch, and they'll actually stay in the pouch for many months. And when they begin to poke their heads out, then you know you're about another 3 weeks or so before they actually start hopping out of the pouch. And even then, at the slightest bit of nervousness, they'll jump back into the pouch, which always looks a little uncomfortable for me, thinking about Mom, as this large joey's now just jumping back in and seems to disappear.
Okay, and then Kathy wants to know, do you do any summer internships? If so, can young people apply other than Millbrook students?
Absolutely. So we actually have two different kinds of internships. We have college level internships, and those are pretty competitive, but we have a summer long internship for college students. And then we have we don't really call it an internship, but we have a volunteer program for high school age students that also occurs through the summer. And yes, absolutely, students besides Millbrook School students can apply for those.
And anyone can go onto our website at trevorzoo.org and look on the volunteer page, and there is a form there that you can fill out. And if you are or your child is high school age, please, we are in the process of accepting those applications right now, and things do eventually fill up. So if you are interested, please get on that. And hopefully by the time June and July roll around, we'll be back to normal operations here.
Yeah, so actually, before I answer another question, that actually is a good segue to say, all of us, of course, are in the same boat. We don't really know when things are going to go back to normal. Our goal is to reopen as soon as possible. It was actually a difficult decision to close. Many of the people that are in the community were calling to ask if we were open because they were looking for good outdoor activities to do with their families. And yet, at the same time, we're also trying to support the federal and state and local agencies that are trying to control the spread of the coronavirus. So, we looked at a lot of factors. In the end, of course, we realized that one of the best things we can do is to try and flatten this curve and limit the spread of the coronavirus. We are closed to the public. Again, our goal is to open as soon as possible and recreate this opportunity for people to visit in person. In the meantime, of course, we're hoping to put out as much digital and video content as we can to be a resource for you.
Okay. Allison would like to know, do the fish sleep? If they do sleep, do they pass away?
There's an interesting thing about fish, and I don't know everything about fish. I'll tell you that right on the front end. Fish sleep like all species, but what that exactly means, I don't know. They certainly become much less active, at least the fish that we have become much less active at night when the lights go out, and you can see them basically kind of in one spot. Do they dream? Are they truly asleep like we are? I don't know that.
Okay.
Good question to look up.
Are you hiring any summer help? I think we covered that on our page. Check out our website at millbrook.org, and we have a volunteer page, and any job postings are posted there. Corey would like to know, can the animals get COVID-19?
Actually, there's a lot of research right now that is being done. It certainly is a scientific possibility that this is a zoonotic disease, meaning that it can go back and forth between animals and humans. To the best of our knowledge and to the zoo researchers out there right now, this is not a threat to the animals in our collections. There's a lot of research that's going to continue around the study of coronavirus for actually probably years to come. And here at the zoo, we're doing everything we can to limit the spread of the virus, including the basics like washing our hands, trying to limit the number of people that we have working here at any given time, and also wiping down all of the surfaces with sanitizers and trying to keep the high touch areas as sterile as possible.
I think you might have gotten all the questions.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to thank any of you that have that tuned in. Again, I'm not a professional actor, so bear with me. I hope it wasn't too bad, the blips and mistakes I made as we went along. But I'm really excited to be able to offer this as an opportunity, and I hope that we see you again next Wednesday at 4 o'clock. At the moment, that's going to be our schedule, and we'll have some good exhibit talks to move on to next. So thank you very much. We will hopefully see you next Wednesday. Take care.